All right. As CJ said, we're dropping in from Temple, but two of us have been previous SIL members, myself along with Charlie, and we're so happy to bring you this presentation, Level Up Your Student Workforce. Myself, the director of the library, Lizzie Yazbak, Charlie Perkins, and Julie Randolph will all be telling you how we changed how we were able to offer our services based on our access to student workers. So a little about us. We are a small staff. We have 6 librarians and 1 paraprofessional, but we have a large law school. We have, including the LLM students, about 800 students and about 60 faculty members. And as we all started working here longer, because we're all pretty new, most of us are pretty new to Temple, we realized we had a lot of big ideas. We wanted to start different things like a podcast, or we wanted to do more with our rare books and preservation. So we were trying to figure out how we could do that when librarian and staff time was extremely limited due to our size. So in the before times, we had a few student workers. We had circulation desk workers who were all undergraduates and also doubled as our technical services workers if they wanted more hours. It was hard to plan with this model because if someone was doing tech services works, for example, and someone else called in to the circ desk, that person was pulled to cover the circulation desk. And we also had a research assistant to help with faculty requests. So during this model, we had about 8 to 10 student workers each semester. So when we decided to level up our student workforce, we kept the circulation desk worker. We made technical services student workers their own separate unit. We also added reference desk assistants to help free up librarian time for covering the reference desk. And we still kept research assistants, but we increased the number that we offered. Additionally, all brand new is now we have book repair students, which are arts history students who are really good with bookbinding. We have a rare books assistant. We also have someone working with our podcast, and we also take advantage of the Temple University Interns program, and we have a marketing and video interns. So switching over to this model did have growing pains. So for example, as I mentioned earlier, we were used to just pulling that tech desk worker and taking them over to the circulation desk. But now we're keeping our student workers in their own lane so they know what they're supposed to do each shift. And so the librarian or staff member that supervises them knows that they can use those students to do the work that they're expecting them to do. So that does come with a lot of teaching and training with this model. So with our RA training, we also do a larger research assistant training for the law school. So our RAs are expected to come to that as well. And then we do some more with our SharePoint and orientation. So I'm going to turn it over to Lizzie to talk more about those options and more about how we're training students.
All right, thanks, Michelle. So just briefly to begin, I do like to highlight what an important role as managers we play with managing our student staff. Certainly our students help out our departments doing actual work, but I think that we have an obligation to help them learn useful skills that they can apply beyond our library. There are a ton of studies linking student employment to better grades, higher levels of career readiness, and like maturity levels. And at least for the students I manage, oftentimes this really is their first real job. So of course, I'm teaching them how to manage their circulation desk, but I also like to teach them these transferable skills that they can use beyond the walls of our library. And the first of these that I want to highlight is autonomy. We trust our students to do a lot of work on their own. They open our service desk fully independently. They work weekend shifts without any professional staff in the office. And our technical service students come in and look for their own assignments on a whiteboard. And then their workstations are spaced out throughout our stacks, so they don't have a lot of physical supervision when they're doing their work. And the expectation is just set that they are managing their own time and getting their projects done. Hand in hand with that is responsibility. Michelle, if you want to click to the next slide. Perfect. Students have regularly scheduled shifts and they are expected to be working them. And at least for our circulation students, if they can't come to a shift because they manage our front desk, it is their responsibility to get that shift covered. So in scheduling, we use something called When I Work, which is an internet-based software that makes it really easy for me to schedule our students. So this is what it looks like on my end. Each student is represented here by a different row. So I'm able to adjust their schedules. I can schedule different positions, and it's just, really easy to navigate. But a nice feature of this is that it really lets students take ownership of their schedules as well. So they're able to put up shifts that they need coverage for. So this is an example of what it looks like when a student needed to put a shift up, and then you can see they were able to chat with each other. And once another student claims the shift, it automatically updates both of their schedules. So again, the expectation is set that students are doing this without me needing to remind them to be doing it every time. Click to next one. The third skill we focus on is professionalism, which certainly comes through in a lot of different aspects, but maybe most obviously with our circulation students and their customer service interactions. A lot of my students are undergraduates and they don't necessarily know who our patrons are. So whether they're speaking to a law student or a faculty member or an administrator, and certainly sometimes it's easier to guess who you're speaking with than other times, but making sure that we're providing that really top tier customer service at all times is something that we really emphasize in our students' training. So we were able to kind of formalize our new students orientation and first day training process. So we have one outline that we use for all of our students on their first day that includes a tour and some kind of technical things about clocking in and out. But then, it has everyone's favorite customer service role-playing activities. So really making sure that all of our students are trained professionally right off the bat. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is problem solving. So I was able actually to recently digitize our student worker manual, which used to be a physical binder that lived out at the circulation desk, and I've transferred everything over to SharePoint. So SharePoint is a wiki builder hosted by Microsoft that I think it's pretty easy to use. It's really easy to update. It's super easy to share with students. So I'm able to add them right to the page and they have access to all of this information. And students, again, the expectation is set that they have this open on the desk and it's the first place they can go to answer any questions that they may have during their shift before they come to myself or one of the librarians. I would say just overall, all of us as managers here at Temple really have the mentality of what else can our students do? So what projects can we transition from myself or the librarians that can instead be something that students can work on and excel at? So just two quick examples of this. The first would be our rare book assessment and kind of book repair departments. Michelle actually got to know one of our circulation students who is a graduate art history student, and she's very capable of doing some higher level tasks. So we were able to create this position where she works with Julie to go through our general collection and find rare books. And then she also assesses things in our general collection for some basic book repair, which then we were able to hire book repair students who have way more bookbinding experience than I had expected any student to come in with. We were able to create these new departments. And then a second example is we had a classics major work at our circulation desk who we were able to have translate some Latin text in a monograph for one of our students. So really, you never know what your students are going to bring to the table and the skills they're already going to have. And to speak a little bit more about that, I will turn it over to Charlie.
Thanks, Lizzie. One of the things we all know, the wonderful things about working at a university is that you're a part of a community filled with people who have extraordinary talents. And so what would you be able to accomplish if you could hire students with expertise in specific skills? During the early days of the pandemic, when off-campus internships became scarce, we received just this challenge from our university's internship program. The librarians at Temple got together and we decided we were going to host an undergraduate intern to help us launch a podcast. Later, we would choose to add another to help us redesign our website and create videos for the library. And ultimately, we added another position for outreach and communication. Working with the internship program helped us match the students who had a high level of interest in the work we needed to be done, and who also brought a heightened sense of professionalism to the placement. All of our internships are paid internships. They're not for academic credit. And Lizzie already mentioned that You want to work with your students to help them grow and develop in a supervisory relationship. That's present in all of our interactions with our student workers, but a great thing about working with the intern is there's a formalization of that mentorship relationship. And for interns, a large part of what they're trying to get out of the experience is related to their professional development skills. This means that we have to begin each semester discussing the intern's goals. We look for opportunities to create work experiences that interest them and strengthen their resumes and portfolios. While the intern program was great for introducing us to a talent pool we had not previously developed, it was limited to the fall and spring academic semesters. So for some positions that require year-round attention, such as the podcasting position, we decided to convert that position to a regular student worker position. Still, we took what we learned from the internship program to tailor our recruiting for the position to locate students from our Klein School of Communication. And Julie, can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with the podcast?
So there's several advantages to having a student worker working with a podcast that I think can translate into larger areas of interest where you might want to have a student worker. And as Charlie mentioned, students' experience and interest is really nice to have. So for the podcast, it's great to share responsibility with someone who is really into audio quality and knows the technology much better than I do, and is also happy and willing and able to sit for several hours in a row perfecting a podcast's audio. And our interns and student workers provide benefits beyond technical expertise. They bring a different perspective to our programming. For example, our current podcast student worker is a Taylor Swift fan, and she was very interested in Swift's ability to legally re-record or re-release her songs. So the student worker developed her interest into an episode called Legal Loopholes. Not only did this give us a topic that the librarians hadn't thought of, our student worker was able to work on something she was passionate about and to create an episode that she can use as a demo when she pursues jobs after graduation. I've also found that having a student worker helps keep projects on task or on track. Our podcast student worker maps out the episodes for each semester, and we work from that to arrange guests, draft questions or talking points, and schedule recording sessions. Having someone dedicated to a project means there's someone reminding me that they need materials and feedback by a certain date. So it makes procrastination, at least on my part, a little bit more difficult. Back to you, Charlie.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier that in addition to the podcast intern, one of the other early internships we created was the web design and video editing intern. This was a position that taught me a lot of great lessons. The first is that proper focus on the library's part for what the position will do is critical for the success of the placement. Trying to have the intern work both on fixing the website and creating videos spread her too thin and did not allow her time to focus on either task. Subsequently, each semester, I survey the candidate pools and then tailor the work to be completed during the internship based on who I have available to be an intern. The second thing I learned was to know what tasks require you to recruit for familiarity with specific tools and which allow for more flexibility. For example, our website is built using WordPress, and this is designed to be a user-friendly interface that does not require knowledge of HTML or CSS, and to a degree that is true, but there's still a learning curve. And the first intern we had, she and I spent the entire semester learning what WordPress could do rather than improving the website. Learning my lesson, the next semester, I knew I wanted to focus on improving the website. So I looked specifically for candidates who had done website work before. Additionally, I focused in on those who had done so using WordPress. The intern that semester came in with knowledge and, more importantly, the confidence to propose and implement changes that improved our web presence. On the other hand, sometimes you can be more flexible. For video production, I initially asked the interns to use Adobe Premiere Pro since it was a powerful video editing service that was provided for free by the university. Well, if anyone's used that service, that system, they know Premiere Pro represents another steep learning curve for any intern not used to using that specific software. By the end of the semester, the intern had learned a little bit about it, had created one instructional video, and had done a training for the librarians about the capabilities of Premiere Pro versus Premiere Rush. But I was looking at having to start that learning curve all over again with the next intern. So in future placements, I decided to be flexible, allow the students to use the editing software they prefer, which helped flatten the learning curve, allowing the intern to begin producing videos much more quickly. The work our students can do for the library is indeed only limited by our imagination. Julie, would you be able to tell us about our newest intern position?
So with all this increased law library activity, thanks to in part to our interns and student workers, we've been doing a lot more outreach and communications than we ever had in the past. So this semester, we decided to have an outreach and communications intern to help us create a law library brand to make our messaging more uniform in format and content and easily identifiable, whether it's a video, a flyer, or a newsletter. And this meant picking a color palette and a font library for law library communications. And here's a few examples. It's still a work in progress, so this might not be our final format, but we've used this initial branding kit to create a student worker newsletter and a flyer that you see here. I'll also mention the student worker newsletter here. I know it's too small for you to read it, but the two student workers that were highlighted here include a film major and a neuroscience major. I'm not sure whether we'll use the neuroscience major skills, but a film major, we definitely have asked questions of when we were making some videos when we had a library student working with us. So we do have a wide variety of experience, even on our circulation desk that we draw from. But it's also important, especially with interns, but also with student workers, to make sure you keep checking in with them to make sure their goals are being met and to see whether they have any suggestions for improvements. Sometimes student workers and interns are shy about bringing up suggestions, but they are willing to share their thoughts if you ask them if there's anything they think could be done differently or better. When I asked our outreach and communications intern mid-semester if there was anything else she wanted to do or that she thought we should be doing, she asked to create a survey to find out how law students learn about library programs and resources, so we'll know where best to target our outreach efforts. As a result, she's now developing a short survey that students will fill out at our end of semester event for a prize. So we'll see what the survey results say. Perhaps they'll point us to something our next intern or student worker will work on. And now I'll turn it back to Charlie to discuss a question I'm sure some of you are thinking about.
All right, I'm sure many of you with budgeting responsibilities have been saying through our talk with something like this image running through your mind. We have increased the number of student workers we have hired, and we've increased the base pay to remain competitive to get quality student workers. So yes, our costs have gone up. But what I hope you have also heard through this discussion is that by having clear objectives for what we want to get from our student workers, being more deliberate in our recruiting processes, and spending more time on training, the value of the work product we receive from the students has also gone up, and we think we are getting much better value for our dollar than we did before. This has in turn freed up our professional staff to do more things at the top of their skill levels. Put another way, according to the latest AALL salary survey, the median salary for a public service librarian with less than 5 years experience at an academic institution is about $54,000, or just about $26 an hour. Is it better for the library to have that person fixing audio levels on a podcast or correcting captions in a video, when we can have a student worker do the same work, oftentimes more quickly and a better quality for around $10 an hour? Again, we're looking for opportunities that we can really leverage the student workers to free up our library staff to continue to expand and do more things at the top of their skill levels.
Thank you all. I have to say thank you to Charlie, Julie, and Lizzie, because my idea was we need more student workers. Here's some money, make it work. And they have found ways to make it work. And our work product has been well received from the university and the law school. So for example, we just had a 125th celebration of the law school, and probably one of our most downloaded podcasts was one that we did for the 125th. So happy to open it up to questions. You can drop them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. We have a question: with the increase of student employee positions, but also creating specialized position, is there a singular manager of each position, or is there one overall manager? Students, depending on what department the student is assigned to, they have, I can't really say there's really a singular manager. They have a main manager. But because we're so small, we kind of all dip into different areas of the library. So they interact with a lot of the librarians and the staff, but they do each get a main manager. So for example, the research assistants, Charlie is the main manager, but they will interact with the other librarians. Circulation desk, Lizzie is the main manager. Julie, since she's in charge of our rare books, the rare book assistant reports to her. So they do get a singular manager. And how do we divide the work and supervision, mentoring of the student employees? That's usually, so we have department heads meetings, and then the department heads meet separately without me. So I imagine some of that happens in there, but Charlie and Julie, would you like to add to that second part of that question?
We all have kind of the group of student workers that we know we're the primary point of contact for, as Michelle already mentioned. And so we will discuss projects that are ongoing, and we will get feedback from the other members of the library staff, but principal communication will come from whoever's the principal manager for that group of students. If that answers the question.
Yes.
And because we're small, we often know, we all know what student workers we have. And so if you have something that you think would be more appropriate for someone else's, or a student worker that someone else is the primary point of contact for, we will talk to that person and say, hey, does this person have capacity to help me with the research project for this professor? That sort of thing.
And I guess I'm asking how many principal managers are there who are directly supervising the students with that many students?
I would say there are probably probably on a day-to-day basis, they interface primarily. Lizzie is the primary interface for most of the technical services and the circulation workers. And then I'm the primary interface for the web video intern and the research assistants. And Julie's the primary interface for the podcast and the marketing communications.
Thank you. Sorry.
Any other questions? All right, thank you all. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks everybody. We're wrapping up day 3 and one more on Thursday. Look forward to seeing you all there.